Living in Sandpoint or Sagle, what do you like more? This is a question that's asked of me by people moving here all the time. And because I've lived in both towns, I can give you an honest review and insight into living into each area. Of course, they each have their upsides and downsides, and depending where you are in life or your lifestyle, this could be a bigger decision than what you think. So make sure you stay around to the end because I'm gonna let you know which town I prefer. Let's go ahead and get started. First, let's talk about the overall size, the population, and let's start with Sagle. Now, it's kind of hard to get the exact number, the data on how many people live in Sagle, but you can see in this map right here, it is a vast area. You have East Sagle and West Sagle divided by Highway 95. And you're gonna come across huge plots of land. We're talking 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 plus acres. That doesn't mean that there's no high density spots within Sagle, because there are. You have Bottle Bay, you have Wooded Acres, you have Comeback Bay, you have the Crystal Loop Gun Club area, and these are just higher density because it's either more of a traditional neighborhood or you're on the water where people are cramming to get their share of the water. Let's move over to Sandpoint. If you zoom into just downtown Sandpoint, you got about 13,000 people living in town, but then when you zoom out and you see all that land that Sandpoint covers, again, you're coming across parcels that are 5, 10, 20, 40, 60 acres plus, and that density is actually not nearly as dense as you would expect. If we're trying to come up with who wins this for density and population, I give it a draw because both have their pockets of density, but they also have a ton of elbow room. We have big ranches or big parcels or just forest land or Idaho state land to really give you that elbow room. Number 2, let's talk about local governments, and let's start with Sagle. Sagle is an unincorporated town. This means that there is no local government. And in fact, the Bonner County Sheriff's Office, they are the ones that are patrolling and enforcing the law in Sagle. You might have lower taxes because you're gonna have limited public services. You might have less regulation by local governments. Your permits and your regulations are gonna be a lot less. There's gonna be less oversight, less things that you have to do if you're building or if you wanna do something to your property. There's just gonna be a little bit more freedom. And this is true in Sandpoint, but not within city limits. And the city limits is not that big on Sandpoint. You cannot vote for the mayor of Sandpoint or anything to do with Sandpoint unless you're within city limits. If we are comparing Sandpoint and Sagle in this light, as far as local government and everything, tomato, tomato, because there's going to be some people that don't want that oversight, they don't want the permits, the regulation, and there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, it's if you look at our regulations and our permits, it is so relaxed, especially if you compare Sandpoint to Washington and Seattle, down to California, anywhere in California. So maybe a slight edge to Sandpoint, because if you do want those rules and regulations, they're pretty minor, especially from those big towns and cities. Okay, number 3, we are talking about housing cost. And the thing here, houses, they are not more affordable in Sagle. And here's a graph just to kind of show you what the rolling average 12-month sell price is in Sagle. And I did a filter of 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it came out to $649,000. Now, if we use that same criteria and we look into Sandpoint, that rolling 12-month average sell price comes out to $635,000. So less, but still in the ballpark. My name is Ben Geanetta. I'm a real estate professional and team leader of Elite Realty Partners right here in North Idaho. And if you're planning to make a move to the area and you want to know everything that there is about eating, sleeping, working, playing, the good, the bad, the ugly of Sandpoint, then make sure you subscribe down below. You smash that bell icon. You can also find my calendar link in the description below, and you can schedule a one-on-one meeting with me to discuss this video or anything else related to North Idaho. On to number 4, and we are going to be talking about amenities. Now, Sagle, let's just keep going with Sagle here. There's 2 traffic lights now in Sagle. There's a gas station, there's a ton of storage units. They have a Dollar General, a car dealership, Pierce Auto. I love them, they're great if you need any work done on your car. Pierce is an amazing place to go. They're not gonna have any parades, there's not gonna be any standalone events going on in Sagle. There's really no restaurants. There's been a few in the past, but they haven't lasted, and they actually moved into Sandpoint. Not really an amenity, but there is a elementary school, Sagle Elementary, fantastic school. One of my kids went there for a couple years, and we loved it. The staff is great, the school is great. No negative things to talk about Sagle Elementary. If you want to get access to the river or the lake, you have a couple bays, such as Garfield Bay, Bottle Bay. You have a couple launches along the river that you can get out onto the water. So that recreational activity is definitely there. Now, you don't have as much state land or national forest in Sagle, but it's still there. You might have to drive a little bit further, but it's still accessible, just maybe not as plentiful as Sandpoint. Talking about Sandpoint, let's talk about their amenities. Obviously, there's going to be multiple grocery stores, you have car washes, you have all the medical, you have parks, you have all the events. The festival at Sandpoint is held every year in August. You have fireworks and parades. lost at the 50s. There's a lot going on in Sandpoint. Restaurants, there's a lot of good restaurants. I know some people complain like, oh, we only have a small selection, but I'm the type where I only need a few selections. I'll keep going over and over to those places. There's bars, you have the Hive, which is live music. It's a great venue. In Sandpoint, you have, in the wintertime, you have Schweitzer Mountain Resort is right there. You have Pine Street Woods, which is a great public access to do all these winter activities. There's a lot going on as far as amenities in Sandpoint, where Sagle is just lacking. It's mainly residential with a gas station and a dealership. Okay, let's talk about state parks. And could I have included this into the amenities? Yes, but I decided to break it out because I felt like Sagle needed a win after getting plummeted by Sandpoint in that last round. So Sagle has Round Lake State Park, and that's right down on Dufert. Fantastic, fantastic state park, great lake. There's actually a walking trail across or around the entire lake. They have a couple of docks. You can paddle boat, you can kayak. There's a good swimming spot. It's a fantastic place. My family and I went there all the time when we lived in Sagle. What's also great about Sagle is you have Farragut State Park, not in Sagle, but it's in Bayview, which is not that far of a drive when you live in Sagle. Now let's talk about state parks in Sandpoint. There are none, 0. So who gets the win for this? It's going to be Sagle. Okay, number 6, let's talk about transportation. Now, neither Sandpoint or Sagle offer any real transportation outside of Spot. Now, this is a bus that's in Sandpoint. It goes from Sandpoint to Dover to Schweitzer. It's free, and that's about it. You're starting to see maybe 1 or 2 Uber or Lyft drivers. There's 1 taxi in Sandpoint. I think it's Bonner County Taxi, but that's it. There's really no infrastructure for public transportation. And as we're talking about traffic and transportation, here's the big thing. This is what you need to know and what you need to consider. The Long Bridge that connects Sandpoint and Sagle, and it's about a mile and a half long. And if there's an accident or if something happens to the Long Bridge, that could be a problem. Because if you need to get into Sandpoint and you're in Sagle, you're going to drive about 25 minutes to the west to Priest River, go across the river, and then drive another 25 minutes into Sandpoint. So you're taking about an hour drive to go into Sandpoint. Same could be true if you're in Sandpoint and you're headed home and there's an accident on the bridge. That could be shut down for an hour or 2, maybe a little bit longer. That's not going to be fun for anybody. So please take that in consideration. If you plan on going into Sandpoint on a daily basis, maybe a couple times a day, maybe Sagle's not the best place for you to live. Now, on the flip side of all that, if you're going to be going to Coeur d'Alene or Spokane International Airport a lot, being in Sagle is huge. Overall, to me, I'm going to say that Sandpoint gets the win here because I think you're going to be dealing with the Long Bridge more than you are going to be going to Coeur d'Alene and to the airport. Number 7, let's talk about waterfront homes and views. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit interesting because I'm sure a lot of people think Sandpoint has the views and all the waterfront, but that's not the case. Let's go with Sagle. Sagle has some amazing lots with stunning views of the water. You have Bottle Bay and Garfield Bay, Camp Bay, Sourdough Point, and everything along the river. There's so many opportunities along the river and in Sagle for those views and waterfront. I'm gonna give the win here to Sagle because there's just more opportunity and those views and everything is comparable to the couple communities over in Sandpoint. All right, on to number 8, let's talk about snow amount. Outside of Lakeshore Drive, which is going out west towards Priest River, maybe there's a couple pockets on the east side of Sagle. Sandpoint just has more snow. I've lived in both areas, and yes, as you climb some of the hills and the mountains in Sagle, you're gonna get a lot of snow. But guess what? Sandpoint has hills and mountains too. It's just a microclimate. You have the snow belt, which is running through Selly Valley. I happen to live in that area, so we get a lot of snow. When Sagle has nothing on the ground, I still have maybe a foot or 2 on the ground. So depending on your view of this, Sandpoint gets the win or maybe it gets the loss. It depends if you want more snow or not. Well, there you have it. There are the 8 differences of Sandpoint and Sagle. Now, what do I prefer? Well, I like Sandpoint because more of my life is in Sandpoint with 4-H and karate and work in itself that I don't want to contend with the Long Bridge. When I first moved here, I didn't care about the bridge, but then being disrupted, my day being disrupted by that bridge being shut down more so in the summertime and sitting in that traffic, which I know if you're coming from California or Seattle, you're like, traffic, whatever. I sit in it all the time. But when you get up here and you're used to just driving around and you can almost sleep and drive to where you need to go because traffic's not so bad, when you too get stuck in that Long Bridge traffic, it is frustrating. And now that I'm north of the bridge, I see what everyone talks about being north of the bridge. It is more relaxing. When I see an alert come out saying that there's an accident on the bridge, no big deal. I'm going on with my day because I'm north of town and I don't have to go south. Sandpoint, in my opinion, is the clear winner on where to live. Now, if you want to be waterfront, or maybe it's just a retirement, it's just a summer home. Maybe this doesn't matter to you as much. All right, so I want to hear from you. What do you think is a better place to live, Sandpoint or Sagle? Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Leave it down in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say.